Welcome back to the Lucky 13 podcast, where we talk about all things people in profit and business. I'm your co-host, Mike Lantz.
And I am Joshua Hauser, as we talked about.
Josh, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm pretty good. It's a beautiful day out today. Having a good time in here, laying down some knowledge. So it's good stuff.
We are. If we get rid of the squeaky shoes, we're going to have a great day.
Yeah, that's our producer over here, Chris, who's got squeaky shoes. So
I thought it was his knees at first because he is getting old. He broke the 50 mark.
We all are getting old.
We didn't need to bring ourselves into this.
Yeah,
he can't defend himself.
We want to show some empathy and show that he's not by himself.
Yeah, and he probably can do some edits to make us look bad later. So, Chris, we love the squeaky shoes.
Yeah,
love it.
So we call ourselves Lucky 13 because we have I have 5 kids. You have 8. Added together 13. You brought up a really great idea. I think we're going to have a little squared and exponential squared.
Love it.
So let's talk a little bit about your wife, Amanda. She's a published author.
Oh, my gosh.
Tell me a little bit about that.
You know, we have some of the craziest Christmases under the sun. My wife literally wakes up and thinks nothing but, how can I make every holiday, every birthday, and every Christmas just have this magic to it? And so when people started finding out what our Christmases were like, people started asking about, well, your kids said you did this at Christmas, and it's this strange story, but we don't have normal Christmases. It's this Mission Impossible type themes and movie themes, and our kids have no names on their present, and she does this every year. And so we're on about year 16 or 17 on this, and so we started pushing. It's time to start writing your story. And this year she just finished her 4th book, which is essentially reliving the Christmases that are our special elf in our life, which is known as Impish the elf, has brought to us. And she's having so much fun sharing that magic and watching families start to adopt that. And I'm just like the other 8 kids. I can't wait to see what Christmas is going to be like this year.
That's awesome. Wasn't she on the Today Show a while back?
She was. She's kind of a big deal. Yeah. Well, she'll probably watch this. I definitely punched above my weight class to find this one. But yeah, she's Today Show. She works with Damon John a little bit, helping him ghostwrite books behind the scenes. She's done some author work over, a little bit everywhere, writes curriculum. I don't know what phone booth she gets in, then hops out of to be Superman, and then goes to bed. But I don't know how she gets it done. But I know one thing she can do. She can bake, because you don't get a body like this without some good baking.
Body by a man.
I love it.
Awesome. All right. So one of the things that I loved about you is you've got phrases, and one of the things you talk about is eyelid tattoos.
Oh, let's hit some eyelid tattoos.
So what the heck are eyelid tattoos?
There are moments that conversations happen, and there's the funny lines you use, and there's the go-to lines, but there's also, I call them the reset lines, is that it's not that you've memorized it, it's just become part of your DNA, that when conflict happens, or when profit opportunities happens, or when a difficult conversation or an opportunity presents itself, there are just quick eyelid tattoos that pop in your head that your brain's trained that once I say this, I go into this mode. And then I love practicing those. I rehearse those. I think about those. And now they just become part of the isms of our language, if you will.
The Josh-isms?
Yeah, if that's what you want to call it. I love it.
Okay, so give me an example.
Yeah, so let's think about it. You're talking to a company, and all of a sudden this concept of growth comes up. Automatically in your head, what just flipped? What just flipped to help transition that language to not just you, but to that person you're talking to really dial into where we're going to go with growth? So what are some of the quick eyelid tattoos that flip into your head?
Businesses don't grow, people do.
Oh, see how simple that was to come out.
Yeah. So that was the mantra of this company I worked with, Defender Direct, and we believed that our people were our greatest strategic advantage, and so we invested into them. And as long as we invested into them and we kept them on a growth path, our business couldn't help but grow.
Can you imagine every time somebody said, man, I've just really want to try to grow my business, and the eyelid tattoo of so many people say, one more time?
Businesses don't grow, people do.
And then all that did is reset you to get into, we got to talk about your people first. And that's such a great line.
Yeah, that's for sure. How about, I'll throw one at you.
Okay.
How about culture?
Oh my gosh. Culture. Can't have any frozen turds in the punch bowl. That's the one I use. That goes to my head right away. And what I mean by that is that there are a lot of people in cultures that are the frozen piece in the punch bowl and can keep it cold, and they're doing everything they need to. But from a culture standpoint, from their true self, from their values, from how they're interacting with everybody else, as that ice thaws, it's going to ruin your punch from within. And so I go to this frozen turd in the punch bowl. We can't have frozen turds in the punch bowl. We got to identify it before it thaws, because once it thaws, you've now infected all the punch, which means you've infected your whole organization.
Yeah. So where do you see it infecting?
Oh,
I wouldn't want frozen turds in a punch bowl, but talk about some examples you've seen.
Oh yeah,
where it's really impacted organizations.
I always
certainly never hear it invest.
Never hear
in your previous life.
I've heard of the best salespeople a lot of times everybody doesn't like them, but they hit the numbers. Does that make sense? Or the one person who knocks out everything at their desk, but you would never have a conversation. You wouldn't do what we call high-low buffalo. What's your high of the day? What's your low of the day? And what's that one thing that you didn't expect? Because you really just don't want to get into that conversation. You actually feel icky when you're done. And so what we do is we hide behind the fact that they're getting the job done and don't realize that they're eroding everything within. And we see that in NFL teams, NBA teams. And the reality is we'll apply it on Monday morning quarterback time, but we won't take that same lens and look at our own organization and say, if this wasn't making the sales, would I keep this person in the organization? And that answer should be the same whether they're making the number or not making the number. If they don't fit the organization, they don't fit the organization.
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes we think, again, we're talking about all things people and profit. So a lot of times business owners think, well, he's making me too much profit.
Correct.
Or is he?
No, yeah, there is an undercurrent, right? The water's coming in. You're feeling the water coming in, but the undertow is pulling people out, and you don't realize it. They're literally standing on the beach, and you're just seeing people disappear. And I don't know why Joni left, and I don't know why Chachi left. Well, because every time the Fonz comes in, he's destroying everything for everybody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I use Happy Days a lot, and obviously Arthur Fonzarelli was a good person in general. But that machismo walking in can rub people wrong if you don't spend the time to get to know them. And then when you do get to know them and you find out that is who they are, boy, you got to have some conversations. Is the profit worth the loss of the good people I have?
Yeah. So let's take an off ramp here for just a second.
Oh, I love it.
We'll come back in a bigger way to this topic in a future episode. But can you briefly describe how EOS teaches you to identify the turd in the punch bowl?
Oh, I love it. So we use this scientific term called a people analyzer, right? And it's simply this. You have a set of core values that you've hopefully identified and you've shared by all. When we say shared by all, not just said the words, but actually told the story and actually told the antithesis of, right? Yeah. So if always growing is one of your core values, then not growing, not participating in growth, not being a part is the antithesis of. And then you got to have an example. And so what you would do is I'd take you, Mike, and I'd put you on this sophisticated chart that has your name and the values, and I'm going to give you a plus, minus, or a minus. And so a plus to me means that 80% or more that you live this value every day long. We all go below the line for a second, but it's not enough for me to remember. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
From a plus minus standpoint, I have specific examples, especially in the last 30, 60, 90 days, that I can recall where that value was not lived. And it was actually more antithesis then. Does that make sense? And then the minus is it's so frequent that becomes your new norm. And what you have to come up with is this objective measurement of, if I think about always growing and how I've defined it to the team, and I put Mike in that lens, is he a plus, minus, or a minus? Yeah. And you do that across your values. Now, every organization measures it different. Most companies measure this 2 to 1. I got to have 2 pluses for every minus, right? And if you're not above those, we got to start having a conversation of, are you an ice cube? And you can take it from there.
Yeah, yeah. And I would throw out that, why would you want anybody with a minus?
If they're a pure minus, so there are moments in time. I always try to give grace, right? And so the curiosity in me says, what's going on in their life before I judge them as a person? Yeah. We never know what's going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
But if you've been curious and have pulled out nothing, what you're finding is that person's probably the minus that they are actually exposing themselves to be, and you got to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And then there's the flip side, which I'm going to push back on you, because now we've identified they're the person, but do they get it, want it, and have the capacity to make that profit for us? So talk to me on what are the eyelid tattoos on that profit conversation that we got to have.
Oh, boy. Well, here's the way I think about profit in many cases. Profit is like the oxygen in the blood. Sometimes businesses don't like to talk about it, and they don't like to talk about it in front of their employees. Their employees expect an organization to be profitable.
Oh, absolutely.
For anybody that's listening, think about the last fun thing that you did in your organization. That might not have happened if the organization wasn't profitable. And so a lot of times really difficult decisions have to be made in order for the organization to continue to thrive. And so that's where I kind of think, profit is not talked about enough. There's an awesome book called The Great Game of Business by Jack Stack.
Yep.
And he basically, it's a fantastic book. You ought to pick it up. But the summary is this: he basically bought a failing business, and he decided to bring everybody in his company on the inside of the books. So he showed them exactly how much money they were making or weren't making, and he tied everybody's compensation to it. Now, I understand there are a lot of organizations that don't want to open up their books that much, right? But the bottom line is you can't run a valuable business that has a long future, long into the future, without making profit. Period. End of story. And sometimes tough decisions have to be made in order to preserve profit.
And what I heard you say is, and what that book clearly illustrates is, I need to know how I play a part in that. Yeah. I'm part of the body that oxygen in the blood is taking it to, right? Yeah. And I need to know how I got to reciprocate back, because I got to take that body and then I got to use it to come back, because blood is this circulating item.
Yeah.
And so am I actually providing oxygen in there, or am I just a taker of?
Yeah.
And so that's where that people and profit come in clearly.
Let me give an example of this.
Oh,
so we at TrueU and ML, we really run the organization together operationally, although the two are separate businesses. And so in July, the management team read the Great Game of Business, and we opened up all of our books to our employees. We have about 17 employees, rolled out all of our books, and we started profit sharing. Prior to that, one of the things we do is run leadership programs. And we always have these deadlines of when you have to sign up for the leadership program.
Sure.
Prior to us doing this and showing them how we make money and tying everybody's compensation to the profit of these two organizations, if one of the salespeople came up to the operational people and said, hey, I got 3 more people I want to put in a leadership program, and if it was past the deadline, they were likely to go, can they wait till the next one?
Yep, I see where you're going.
So this past leadership program that we kicked off, we actually had a client call us a week after the program started. It's a 3-month program.
Yep.
A week after the program started, and said, I want to put 3 people in it. Guess what everybody in the organization said?
I'm sure they did.
Hell yes, bring them in.
Because they
knew that adding those 3 people were going to increase the profitability of the organization, and they were tied to it, and it helps the organization succeed and thrive and that sort of thing.
And I love the fact, because they could feel that decision rather than having to defend that decision.
I was told of the decision.
Oh, that's amazing. They didn't even check it with you.
They didn't even check. They were like, this is what we're
awesome.
doing. And I was so happy. But I don't know that there's nothing against the people that were making the decision before, but shame on me as a leader.
Correct.
I wasn't educating them enough on what it meant when we bring in 3 additional people to a class that was already profitable, what that could really mean for an organization.
Isn't it amazing when you have clear communication and you set not expectations again, you set agreements on how we're going to get profitable, that then you created space for them to make decisions in.
Yeah.
That's so critical. And it's not even decisions. I would even argue that they were making choices for the greater good of the firm, and less about choices based off of these set of finite, this is defined only.
Yeah.
We're not in grenades here. We can think a little bit outside the box and be creative. And I love the fact that your team took that July opportunity and is now starting to grow around it.
Yeah, it's been exciting. And they ask me questions all the time too, like, where are we compared to our profit?
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's really it's
when people,
you
ever go to a basketball court and it's 5-on-5 and no one's keeping score?
Yeah.
That's the worst basketball to ever watch in the world. Yeah. But when you get 5 people on the sideline waiting on who we got winners, the game changes. And all you did was say, I'm just going to show you there's 5 waiting. Not that you're threatening their jobs, but there are people waiting. There's dollars on the line here, and the game changed. And all of a sudden we started keeping score. We started setting a little bit better picks, maybe playing a little bit more defense.
Yeah.
That's usually when I don't get picked up for the next game, but that's all right.
I don't either. Okay, so eyelid tattoo for you, conflict.
Oh my gosh. Oh, conflict. I love conflict. You know what? And I'm sure my wife will hear this, and I work on this hard. And when I sense conflict, a couple things go through my head, but the one that always, when I'm the recipient of, because I believe in 20 seconds of courage and 5 minutes of awkward. I use that all the time. Look, it's only going to take us 20 seconds of courage and 5 minutes of awkward, and whatever's going on between us, we're going to get figured out. That's why I use that all the time. But during that emotional state, when we're letting the air out of the balloon of that person, those are the things going on in my head right now, is that I always go to what I heard you say. And I say that because you're all hot, man. You were salty, and you're bringing it. And I'm only going to hear the words that I hear,
right? And
that's what I'm going to respond to. And those are maybe 1/10 of what you said, or just words you threw in the heat of the moment that actually had nothing to do with what the true conflict is.
Yeah.
And so simply just by saying, okay, I heard you, and what I heard you say is, and then allowing you to not rebut, but just clarify, crystallize what you're really dealing with. Because what we find out, the problem isn't here. The problem's the problem. And we're using this emotional state of eye contact and this intimacy that's going to get in the way. And so I just want to get the air out of the balloon, repeat back what I heard come out of the balloon, and then give you one more chance to restate. Oh, well, now we know what the problem is. Let's go shoulder to shoulder and work on this problem together.
Yeah, I love it. And along in that dialogue at some place is this idea of tell me more.
Yes.
Like,
what
because a lot of
else?
times when they show up with the initial thing, it's really not the thing.
That's the weed. That's not the root.
That's right. That's right. And so getting them to say more, a little bit more, then the real problem starts to come out. And that, because you want to address that, not the emotion around
Oh,
it,
yeah.
right?
One of I use analogies with everything. And so my eyelid tattoo to what you just said is, let's not weed eat. Let's actually kill the root today. So let's just go a little deeper. And that means I got to be curious, right? I got to ask questions and just be willing to what you just said. What else? Tell me a little bit more. Help me understand a little bit. Let me see it through your eyes. Dig into that a little bit more and realize that although you're the recipient of the voice, you're not actually the problem.
Yeah,
Let's go
for
deal with the problem.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw one in on the conflict
come
spectrum
on,
as
bring
well.
it.
So one of the things that I always think about when I'm in conflict with somebody, if you and I are in conflict, okay, and we work for the same organization, there's a third person in the room.
Who is that person?
That other person is the organization. Or let's say that
is it so easy?
Let's say that I'm in an argument or a conflict with my wife Julie. We're not the only ones in the room. There's the family unit in the room as well. Even though they're not in there. I mean, I'm not going to line up my 5 kids and watch my wife.
Hey,
and
watch
I
this.
I don't know. Maybe it would be good if we were going through conflict constructively.
I can see American Gladiators right now.
Yeah. She'd kick my ass. So, but the bottom line is that we've got to make a decision for the good of the family unit, or we've got to make a decision for the good of the business. And it's very possible that the decision we're going to make is going to tick off one of the two of us or both of us, but it's the right thing. You know how many times in my career, I've worked for 3 other companies. You know how many times in my career I've put my name on a layoff list?
Tell me this.
3 times.
Have you really? For the greater good
For
of the
the
company?
greater good of the organization,
Oh, that's
because
awesome.
because I still wanted to be there, but it wasn't necessarily in the best interest for the organization to keep me and remove some other people.
And you weren't playing martyr and you weren't playing
wasn't.
victim.
I wasn't.
You were being as authentic self, true values, pluses on the value charts for the greater good of the organization. My position is the wrong position. Not that I'm the wrong person. My position is the wrong. And to that point, when the greater good, let's try not to do that in our marriage, by the way, but for the greater good of the family unit, for the greater good of the organization, for the greater good of our relationship, we're going to have to make a decision today.
Yeah.
What's wrong with going there?
Yeah. Well, and in all 3 of those cases, that's not what ended up happening. They didn't include me in that. But the greater good of the organization were to keep these couple of other people and let me go.
Yeah, because you could stay and not say that and go fast, as we said earlier. But if you want to go far and your journey's far, right, then you have to do what's in the greater good today. We have to do the short-term pain for the long-term gain.
So as we tell all of our listeners, we want to leave them with actionable things. My goodness. So I've got one on this, and then you can add to it. Number 1 is I think it'd be good for somebody to take 5 minutes and write down some of their eyelid tattoos around certain key topics relative to people and profit, and then question them.
That's a great
because I
reference.
think that's the biggest thing. Like sometimes we just I'm 53 years old. So basically for the last 53 years, I've seen the world sometimes in a particular way. And maybe my eyelid tattoos are the wrong way to think about it.
That's a great reference. Yeah. 51 revolutions around the sun for myself. And I think I've got all the answers, right? And so sometimes I don't want to judge myself. I want to get curious with myself, right? Is my curiosity, am I the judge, which is I'm creating a prison for those around me? Or are my eyelid tattoos opening up curiosity, which is where the real adventure begins?
Yeah.
Right? And so that's a great reference. How do you take that and analyze it? And then I'm going to add one too. If you're not sure that you have any, this is a Miles Davis quote. I love it. It took Miles Davis, he says this, it took me years to learn how to play like myself. And so when you don't have your own, borrow somebody else's, but make sure you have intent, you know what that is until you find your own voice. Because all you're really doing is just hitting that reset button for your own self. Because we want to defend and pretend in almost any situation. And so sometimes we'll defend in a conflict or we'll pretend through profit conversations. And just reset yourself. And all you're doing is giving yourself that reset words that get you back into the mode of authentic self, be open, be honest, and let's go find the solution. And let's go have that conversation in a way that you and I can go together with it rather than go apart with it.
I got your Miles Davis reference. You
Did
know why?
you? Because you're old.
No, because I played trumpet.
Did you really?
Still do sometimes.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I think
Not
that's going to be
any
on
good
a
anymore at
podcast.
it, but
I'm
not. No, that thing.
I do interpretive dance. I think between the two of us, we could have a show.
I will skip that show.
Okay.
But that's okay. You can come and do it for yourself.
I'll take the leotard back. Not a big deal.
Well, excellent. Great conversation about eyelid tattoos. Everybody check in on what are some of those eyelid tattoos that they have. Question them a little bit. Is that still the right way to be thinking about things? Thanks for listening.
Oh, man.
You can check us out. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Josh Hauser, Mike Lantz, or Lucky 13 Podcast. Our website. We also are not just Audible podcast, but you can also check us out on YouTube. But please, please, please don't watch the YouTube while you're driving.
No, don't do that. Not anymore.
Excellent.
No.
Good deal.
Great show.